Hello, and welcome to an episode of ES Repair. I am your host, Mr. Fixit. In this video, I'm going to be discussing terminologies for you to know when purchasing a new hard drive. Now, whether you're upgrading your hard drive or if you're just wanting to add more space to your computer, I will be discussing capacity, form factor, interface type, spindle speed, transfer rate, average seek time, average latency time, average access time, buffer memory, smart, native command queuing, and solid state drives. Now, solid state drives is a newer technology. It's been around for a while, but I will discuss differences between advantages and the disadvantages between hard drives and solid state drives. First, let's talk about capacity. Now, this is the amount of data which is measured in bytes that a device can store. Hard disk drives can store as much as 3 terabytes of information. To put this in perspective, a CD stores 700 megabytes of data, or 80 minutes of audio. A dual layer DVD stores 8.5 gigabytes of data, or a 2-hour full featured movie. A dual layer Blu-ray disc stores 50 gigabytes of data, or a 2-hour fully featured high definition movie. So, let's say you had a 200 gigabyte hard disk drive. With that drive, you could store 285 CDs on there. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely don't have that many CDs. You can even store 23 DVDs on that drive. Or, you can store 4 Blu-ray discs on that drive. Now, here's another way you can look at it. In the computer world, a byte represents a character. For example, the alphabet, the letter A, is considered a byte in the computer world. So, if you were to take the entire alphabet, all 26 letters from A to Z, and you have to write them over and over and over, you could do this 76.9 billion times on this single 200 gigabyte hard drive. That should give you some kind of an idea how much you can store. Now, some manufacturers also use photos, music, and video to demonstrate how much information these drives can store. Next, we have the form factor. Now, this is a standard that specifies physical dimensions and designs of major components which manufacturers use to ensure that parts are interchangeable across other competitors and generations of technology. All it is a list of standards. Now, dealing with computers, you're going to hear a lot about form factors. Everything from the power supply unit, the motherboard, the optical drives, the hard drives, the floppy drives, everything that deals with the computer has to follow some sort of form factor. This guarantees that no matter what you do, for instance, it's a 2.5 or 3.5 inch drive, regardless of the manufacturer and regardless of the computer tower or the motherboard, this form factor guarantees that that drive will work in any tower, any computer, regardless of the manufacturer. That's what the form factor means. Now, to demonstrate, I have a 2.5 inch and a 3.5 inch that I showed in my other video about transferring files from an old hard drive. That shows you what a 2.5 inch and a 3.5 inch drive looks like. Optical drives are 5¼ inch. And these are based on the size of the disk or the platters that's inside the drive. Next, we have the interface type. Now, this refers to the connection the drive uses to connect to the motherboard. Now, this is pretty much a dead giveaway, because most of the time when you look at a hard drive, it will tell you whether or not it's a PATA or IDE, or if it's a SATA. That's a dead giveaway right there. But if you're looking inside your computer and you're not sure, here's another way to look. If you look to the right at the top, these are the SATA drive connectors. You have the power connector and the data connectors. This is how you identify if the drive that you have in your computer is a SATA. If you look at the bottom, this is what the data connectors look like for an IDE drive. You have the 4-pin Molex connector, and you have the 40-pin ribbon cable. This is how you can distinguish the two differences. Now, some motherboards do have both capabilities. They do have both the IDE connectors, and it also has SATA connectors. So if your drive is currently IDE, you have a SATA connector available on your motherboard, you can upgrade your hard drive to a SATA drive to make it a lot faster. Now, for the 2.5-inch drives, the connector is usually in one single plug that's mounted to the motherboard. Now, some manufacturers put a little adapter connected between the drive to the motherboard because of the way it's designed. But as I said, the form factor will guarantee that that drive will fit in that laptop. You just may have to remove the adapter from the old drive to the new drive. But it's a single connector, and for like the 2.5-inch that I showed in that other video, that it's 44 pins. Well, it's the same thing, it's just one single plug. 40 pins on one side for the data, 4 pins on the other side to the power, but it's one single plug. And you'll see a lot of this in laptops. Now we're going to talk about the spindle speed. Now, the spindle speed refers to how fast the platter in the hard drive spin in revolutions per minute. The platter is that round mirror looking thing that you see on the left hand side. The spindle is a centerpiece. That is actually a motor. This is what spins the platters around the heads. Now, they can range anywhere between 5,400 RPMs to 15,000 RPMs. Laptops and notebooks, they use around the 5,400 to 5,900 range. Now, this is to conserve battery power, make it more portable, and this produces less heat. Now, many of the desktop PCs use around the 7,200 RPM drives, where these servers use a 10,000 to 15,000 RPM drives. Now, the spindle speed does play a role in the drive's performance, which I will explain a little bit later in this video. Next, you have the transfer speed. This refers to the rate at which data is transferred from the drive to the motherboard. IDE drives have reached the limit of 133 megabytes per second. SATA drives can reach up to 6 gigabits or 750 megabytes per second. Now, don't let this confuse you, because the speed is somewhat misleading. The reason for this is because a lot of overhead goes in between the motherboard and the drive, and internally in the drive, because you have things such as positioning data, which goes back and forth to let the drive know exactly where the heads are located. And you also have stuff like error correction code processing. This is to ensure that information that's going between the drive to the motherboard is received correctly. So you can look at about 47% of the rated transfer speed to be about user data only. The rest of it's the overhead, which is still rather fast. I mean, you figure 750 megabytes and 47% of that's just under half. So, I mean, it's still fast, but it's happening so fast you really don't notice it. Next, we have the average seek time. This is measured in milliseconds and indicates how long it takes to move the read-write heads from one location to another location at random. Now, if you look to the right, you'll see the heads, that arm that sticks straight across the platters. Now, it's referring to how long it takes to move that arm to, say, from that position to the outer edge of the platter. This is how the average seek time. Average latency time measures how long it takes for the requested data to spin around to the head's location to become available once the heads reach the location. Now, let's say that head moved to that position. The data can be anywhere around that section. So latency time will depend on how long it takes for that data to come back around to where that head's located. And this happens after the head arrives. This is where spindle speed reduces the latency. Now remember, the faster that platter spins, the less time it takes for the data to spin around. The average access time is the sum of the average seek time and the average latency time. Now, these drives can take anywhere between 4.5 milliseconds to 10 milliseconds before the data is actually accessed. And that's because of this little feature. The head's going to move first. There's a delay there. Then the data's got to come back around to the heads to be available. There's the other delay. This is your total access time. Next, we have buffer memory. Now, this is also referred to like a cache, however you want to pronounce it, but it's a little buffer. Now, hard disk drives use this buffer memory to store recently accessed data for faster retrieval when that data is called upon again. Now, this refers to any time something is accessed to the drive. It's also stored into the buffer memory. Then that way, if the system calls for it again, it can retrieve the information from the buffer memory first, and it's a lot faster than the hard drive. And this is what happens. Anytime something is called for the hard drive, the first place the hard drive looks is in the memory because it's faster. If it can't find it there, then it goes to the hard drive, looks for it, reads it, and stuffs it into the buffer memory. So, just in case that data is called again, it's in the buffer memory already. Now, accessing this buffer memory is far faster than a hard drive. Now, they can range between 2 megabytes to 64 megabytes. And keep in mind, the more buffer memory that the drive has, the better its performance. Now we have self-monitoring analysis reporting technology, also known as SMART. This monitors several features of the hard drive, which you have no control over. This is all pertaining to the manufacturer of the drive. And what this does is it monitors several features. Things like the head floating height, data throughput performance, spin up time, reallocated spared sector count. Now what this is if a drive finds a bad sector and there's data located in it, there are stored or reserved hidden sectors that are on the drive. Now, for instance, your drive may say it's 200 gigabytes, but actually there's a little bit more, there's more storage space in there, but it's hidden in reserve. That's what this is for. So when the drive finds its bad sector, it can read the data, relocate it to a better sector, and then scratch that bad section off to prevent use over it again. It's kind of like having a spared light bulb, so if the old light bulb blows out, you got a spare bulb to put in it. Well, this is the same thing. If a sector goes bad, reads the data, locates it to a better sector, and scratches off the other one so the drive doesn't use it. You also get seek error counts, seek time performance, drive spin up retry counts, drive calibration retry counts, error correction code processing errors, reading and writing data. Now, these are all parameters that are set by manufacturers of the drive, and you cannot change these. Now, in order for SMART to function, you will need a SMART capable hard drive. Most drives these days are capable of SMART. Even the OS needs to be SMART compatible. SMART aware BIOS. Most newer computers these days are SMART capable BIOS. And you could use a hard disk driver for your particular OS. That's the way you get these SMART to work. Now, if your system doesn't support SMART, there are software on the internet that you can download or purchase that will query these hard drives to get a status update. Now, when SMART is triggered by a problem that has been detected, an alert message is sent from the drive to the driver software in the BIOS. So, the next time the computer boots up, you'll get an alert from SMART. Now, if you ever do receive one of these, back up that data. Don't back up over an existing copy of backup, but create a new backup. The reason for this is in case the event that your drive fails in the process of backup, you can still fall back to a previous copy of the backup. Now, keep in mind, sometimes this can be caused by a fluke, which still, you don't take any chances. Even if it is, at least you still got your copy of your backup. Rather be safe than sorry. Now we have the native command queuing. Now, you'll find these a lot in SATA drives. Now, it's a technology that allows the drive itself to reorder incoming requests from the system. Why? Well, the hard drive knows exactly where the heads are located on the platters. The system doesn't. Well, normally, the hard drive would answer request in the order that it was received. Well, this means it can, if there's a lot of requests comes in, it could work out the drive. I mean, it can be, data is scattered through all out the drive. And I'll show you an example here. Let's take these blocks. The blue represents homes. The red one is you, the mailman. Now, you got a sack full of letters that you needed to deliver to these homes. Now, if you were to deliver this mail as you pick them up, your route may look like something like this. And yes, that looks a little tiring if you had to walk on them distances. This is what it would look like if you picked up a letter blind, looked at the address, and went to that destination without even reordering it. This is something what you'd probably end up doing. Well, this is what the hard drive is doing. Now, if you feel tired doing stuff like that, think of how much wear and tear goes on inside the hard drive with the heads and the arm and the actuator. It's constantly moving like that. Well, what if you organized your letters in order? You know where the homes are at. You know what order their homes are in. You reorder your letters and your requests in order, right? Well, this is what native command queuing does in the hard drive. If you were to take the letters in your pouch and put them on an order that you knew that you were going to run from house to house, from start to finish, this is what you would do. One great big circle. That's it. Lot less walking. Well, this is what native command queuing does in the hard drive. This all takes place inside the hard drive. There's no overhead. The hard drive takes the information that it gets from the system, looks to see where the heads are located, and rearranges its request to compensate less wear to the heads, as you can see in this demonstration here. Now, this helps a lot. This increases performance. It also expands the life of the drive. So when you purchase a new hard drive, check to see if it allows native command queuing. Now, in order to use native command queuing, you'll need either Windows Vista or higher. Now, to my knowledge, the Macs operating systems don't use the native command queuing, to my knowledge. If anybody knows different, let me know. Next, we have a solid state drive. Now, these are newer technologies. Now, they do have their better advantages, and they also have their drawbacks. So, a solid state drive is a device that uses either SDRAM or NAND flash memory modules to store data for long periods of time and provide access to data similar to a standard hard drive. Now, like I said, they do have their advantages over the traditional hard drives in many areas, but they also have the drawbacks, and I will discuss both. The SDRAM based drives use the same type of memory your PC uses. If you've ever upgraded your memory modules to increase the memory in your computer, this is a type of memory that these SDRAM based drives, solid state drives, use. Same thing. Now, these are faster than a NAND flash memory, but they require a power source to maintain the data written in the memory, just like your system memory. In order for the data to stay in there, the computer has to stay on, providing power to the memory modules. Now, you don't usually see these except in high performance computers, servers, or temporary storage medias. That's about the only time you ever see these. NAND flash solid state drives. Now, these are based on the same memory as flash media cards. Those like the compact flash, the SD, the media stick, media probe, blah 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 blah, that you use in digital cameras. And these are slower, not much, but they are slower than the SD drives, the SDRAM based drives, but they're a lot faster than the standard hard drives. Now, these do not require a power source. Once you write the data to these devices, to these drives, the data is on there until it's overwritten. You can pull the plug, whatever. The data is still in there until it's overwritten. Now, let's talk about some advantages of these solid state drives. Now, compared to hard drives, solid state drives are smaller, they're lightweight, and they're fast. They have no spin up delays, they have no latency times, and their random access time is 1/10 of a millisecond. That is fast compared to hard drives averaging between 5 milliseconds and 10 milliseconds. 1/10 of a millisecond is how fast these drives can be. And they can also better withstand impacts, such as dropping the drive. Now, in this picture, I'm going to show you the insides of the two drives. Now, if you look to the left, this is the parts that you'll find in a typical hard drive. On the right is the inside of a solid state drive. See the difference? If you look to the right, there's no moving parts. No moving parts, no noise. So solid state drives, there's no moving parts whatsoever. All you have is the memory modules, which I have squared out, and below that is the controllers. That's it. It's all solid state. This is why they call them solid state. If you look to the left, you got the platters, you got the spindle, which is a motor, that's a moving part. The heads is a moving part. They have to float up and down, and if they don't float right, they can do damage to the platters. The arm, the actuator, that moves back and forth. That's a lot of parts that can wear out. Solid state drives read performance doesn't change due to data location. Now, if you look to the left, you can see where the heads are currently located. Data in that area, the throughput is a lot slower. The reason for this is because the data is more tightly packed. It takes longer to read data in that area. Now, if the heads were out to the edge of the platters, the throughput is a whole lot higher, because you can store more information on the outer edge of the disk than you could on the inner edge. This is why the throughput is a lot higher. So depending on where your data is located on that on the drive will depend on how fast that data is read or written. If you look to the right, you don't have that problem. Solid state drives are not susceptible to magnetic fields. They're immune to them. You get a magnet near a hard drive and watch what it does. Now, some of these solid state drives, they can read and write at the same time. Hard drives, well, you can't hardly do that, because now, even though they got multiple heads on multiple platters, they're all attached to the same arm. So you can't actually read and write at the same time on a hard drive. Some of these solid state drives even use 1/2 to 1/3 less energy than a hard drive does. And another good thing about solid state drives is they don't require defragmentation. Let me demonstrate. Here we have I got the two sets of blocks. Marked, the top part shows a block page, and each block is a memory cell. This is how data is written to the solid state drive. They're sequential. What it means is it writes data in sequence from one block of page to the next in sequence. It don't jump out of order. It works in sequence. Whereas a hard drive, it's scattered all over the platters. Here, I'll show you. Data written in the solid state drive on the left, you can see how they're in order. They're all closely packed, tight in order. Well, if you look to the right, you see how they're all scattered? Well, hard drives looks for the next available free space to record data. And what happens is, since the drive is spinning so fast, the heads find the closest free spot that it can find and put data there. And when that fills up, it goes to the next one. And this is what causes fragmentations, is because the file constantly gets fragmented, and then the hard drive has to keep looking for all the pieces to put back together, like a jigsaw puzzle. On the left, it's organized in sequential form. On the right, it's all scattered. Now you can see the difference. Which side do you think can retrieve data faster? The solid state drive on the left, which is in order, or the hard drive that's on the right that's highly defragmented? Well, let's talk about some disadvantages. Now, NAND flash solid state drives have a limited number of writes for the life of the drive. Yep. What happens is, each memory cell that's in the drive has a limited lifespan, which means you can only write to it so many times. I think, last time I checked, it's been a while since I played with these things, that it's like around 1 million write cycles. Now, to give you a perspective on how long these things will last, let's say that you wrote to a single memory cell, or a bit, and you did it once every 1 second. If you was to continuously do that, that single memory cell would start failing in 6 months. 6 months. That should give you an idea of the things about these flash memory modules. Even though you write to them, the data stays on there, but you have a limited time you can write to that specific memory cell. And if you used to write it 1 second at a time for every day, of every hour, of every minute, or every day, it would take 6 months to wear that cell out. We also have encrypting a file. Well, solid state drives have that problem. If the file is already on the drive, like this one, the block page, which contains data. Now, let's say this data here, as you can see, is in sequential form. The white blocks is the empty space. Now, let's say that file you want to encrypt. Well, here's what happens. The data is still on the hard drive. It's not even encrypted. Now, remember what I said about the lifespan of these memory cells? Well, this is what happens to preserve the lifespan. Is that the original data is never physically deleted. It's just flagged for deletion. And the only time they get deleted is if the drive needs a space. And that's it. It may take a while. So as you can see here, the blue represents the original data before it was encrypted. Now, it's still there. It's only flagged for deletion. That's it. The bottom in the green is the data that's containing the new encrypted data. Now, if your drive was, say, stolen, people can use third third-party software to access those memory blocks. It's kind of like a data recovery service that you can get, and if you got vital information on there, well, they have access to it because the drive doesn't delete them. Only deletes the data when the space is needed. So if you're going to encrypt something, do it before you save it to the drive. Now, another thing about these drives is the price. They can cost anywhere between $1.20 to $2 per gigabyte, which limits their capacity to around 120 gigabytes. Now, hard drives, they cost anywhere between a nickel to a dime per gigabyte. So you can see the variations between the two. I mean, yeah, they're both equal in a way. I mean, you have advantages, your disadvantages. It's just kind of weighing what you really want to do and what kind of money you really want to spend. That's where all this comes in. But, for a solid state drive, it can cost you anywhere between $1.20 to $2 a gigabyte. And they do get rather expensive. Now, for the high performance solid state drives, they have a balanced read-write speeds. Otherwise, data writes, they take longer. Usually data writes on a standard drive for these solid state versions, they usually range about 1 or 2 milliseconds apart. It just takes a little longer to write to these drives when they are flash. Hard drives do the same thing. It takes a slightly longer to write than it is to read, except for the high performance drives. It's the same thing. Next, here's one of the worst things about solid state drives. Solid state drives' write performance is significantly impacted by the availability of free programmable blocks. Now, as you remembered, I showed you what each block looked like as a sort of a representation as to what goes on. And each square in a block is a memory cell. Well, let's take a look at the blocks here. Now, if you look to the left, you see all the data, the orange, the brown, the blue, the purple. These all represent data that's already on the drive. Now, you don't usually see this problem until the drive gets nearly full. And this is when you start seeing this problem. What happens is, now this is similar to what hard drives do. Hard drives, the file gets fragmented. Solid state drives, it's the opposite. The free space gets fragmented. And what happens is, the solid state drive can only write a block or a page at a time. Hard drives don't do that. They can write bits here and bits here and parts here and all that. Solid state drives can't do that. They write one block or a page at a time. Well, if you look at these datas, each block represents data written to it, or a page. Well, even though that piece of data didn't take up the whole page, you see the white box? That's fragmented space. Because data is written in there, that space is lost. It can't be used again. The whole page has to be rewritten. So this is where you come into the problem. The drive has to take this information that's on the left and defragment them. Well, defragment the space. I'll show you. Once it goes into the buffer memory, now you can see how they're neatly organized in sequence. Now you get the orange, the brown, the blue, and then the purple. They're all neatly packed together. One continuous stream. Now, if you look to the left, now you have all the empty blocks the drive can write to. Now, once the data is reorganized, now the drive can go back, rewrite this information back into the drive. Now that the drive rewrote the information back onto the modules, now if you look to the bottom, now you have new programmable blocks. Now the constant rearranging like this is what significantly impacts the write speed, because the drive has to rearrange all the data in sequential form to free up programmable blocks, because these things can only write blocks at a time, not a piece or not a cell, the whole block or page. This is what kind of slows them down. Now finally, solid state drives are only mainly designed for Windows 7 and Mac operating systems 10.6.8 and higher. I think it's the Lion and Snow Leopard, I think it's what they are. I'm not familiar with Macintosh operating systems, but you can use solid state drives on Vista and XP, but you got to turn a lot of the features off, because if you don't, they will wear out those drives prematurely. Windows 7 is designed to look for these solid state drives. If it detects one, it turns these features off to preserve the drive. Now as for the Mac operating systems, I'm not that familiar with it, but I do know that these drives do work with them. But as for the problems relating to page files and caches and all that to the drive, I'm not that familiar with it. But if you have some insight using these operating systems with Macintosh, please fill me in so I can help others. Well, this is all you need to know about these hard drives. I hope this information helped you out to give you a better understanding to decide if you want to use a traditional hard drive or if you want to move up to the faster solid state drives. Now if you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to ask or comment down below. I'm your host, Mr. Fixit. Thank you for watching.